Can you hear me?
Folks, have you ever wanted to make an obscene impact on life? I could say obscene money, but it's not about the money. It's about the impact and the influence and making a difference and doing huge things with your life. Nobody does that better than my man, Andrew Abernathey. So I'm excited to give you a dive in today into all the goodness that Andrew's doing and the ways in which he is not only changing his stars, but also changing the stars for other people. My name is Erik Hatch of Hatch Realty and Hatch Coaching. Ooh, we're out of Fargo, North Dakota. It is very cold today, and if you're watching the replay of this, it's probably not as cold as it is today. 27 below as I was just outside for lunch, and now I'm here getting warmed up by Andrew. We are going to learn all about how he has made $25 million in net worth in a few short years and how that's going to continue to compound on itself. I'm here to learn. I simply get to be the host, but Andrew, man, oh man, I'm so glad you're here, buddy.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
We gotta tell the story. We gotta walk through the journey of how it's so funny. We have a very good mutual friend named Than, and Than and you were talking just the other day of how, like, no, you need to have this new identity, and then we send out an email like 2 hours later that calls you the Wonderkid. You're like, son of a gun. But man, you're doing things that people dream of in their life, and you're doing it really as a kid who's still in his mid-20s. Like, it's pretty unbelievable. So let's tell the whole story of where you grew up and how you started to make money and what life matters. And before we do any of that, tell me about what really matters. Tell me about your wife and kids.
Yes, my beautiful wife, Lacey Abernathy, and my kids, Christian, James, and August. We have a 5-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So if you see bags under my eyes, there's a reason for that. But they're everything. They are the backbone of this family. There's no doubt there.
Oh, Andrew, I love it. You're a North Dakota kid, now live in Scottsdale for a lot of your life, but you kind of bounce all around because you're prestige worldwide as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I grew up north of Minot in Lansford, North Dakota. Mm-hmm. Small town.
How many people live in Lansford?
Lansford, maybe 200, and I'm being generous. Mulhall, not far from there, about 800. Yeah.
And nobody knows what we're talking about except for you and me who live in North Dakota.
That's why I say Minot, because that's like the furthest thing people know of, and I'm past that now. So.
Yeah, and Minot, for folks that aren't from North Dakota, Minot is the 4th largest city in North Dakota, and it has about 50,000 people.
Correct.
Is that right?
2 hours north of Bismarck,
the state capital, which has like 100,000 people. So watch out, world. It's on the map. Andrew, you grew up as a farm kid, yeah?
Correct. Yep.
What'd you farm?
We do wheat, barley, corn, soybeans. My 6 siblings and I, so I'm one of 6, so 5 siblings and I, and my parents, we ran the farm and kept us pretty busy, but taught us how to be in a cyclical business and marketing and all that at a pretty young age. I got a whole whopping $5 an hour running grain cart by 10 years old. So I was really stacking the cash at that time.
Oh man. So you weren't handed wealth. You went and found out how to earn it. You were working on the farm when you were young, right? You said $5 for pushing the cart, and you were picking rocks too.
Yep, picking rocks, grain cart, combine, and then my dad and mom wanted me to learn some things off the farm. So, and between putting in the seed in the ground and taking it off, in the summers they would send me out to Delaware, Rehoboth Beach, and I was working on at a Chinese restaurant and a bed and breakfast to make some extra cash for a couple months in the summers, and then in the winters I was cleaning equipment at the local John Deere dealership to make another $7.25 an hour. So I was all over the place.
Andrew, if you can, Cindy had said that it's a little hard to hear you, so if you want to talk a little louder, move a little closer to the mic, that would be great. Oh, much better. Oh, my ears are delighted. How about that? So you were working at what age? You said at 10?
Yeah, 10 was at the farm. I was cleaning the combines at the local John Deere dealership and the local cedar dealership, putting together seeding equipment around 11, 12, and then 13, 14 is when I started heading out to Delaware in the summers to make some extra cash at that Chinese restaurant. I was a busboy.
Oh, that's so fun. So what's the story? How did all this come to be? I'm going to stop asking questions, just let you give us the narrative, because I'm super fascinated as to how you went from being a farm kid bussing tables at a Chinese restaurant to having a net worth of $25 million just a few years later.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'll start and give you some details. So started out raising, farming, getting some capital stacked up. By the time I was 14, so about 2009, roughly 2008, I had 6,000 saved up. I spent 2,000 on a go-kart because I was 14 and I had 4,000 left.
I'm 41. I'd still spend 2,000 on a go-kart. That's
Exactly.
like a
It's
great
totally worth
investment
it.
money.
Yeah. So, 33% of my wealth by it. Anyways, so I went in the market. My birthday's March 23rd, and the market bottomed in March 5th of 09. So March 23rd, I was studying Warren Buffett a little bit. I was doing some grain marketing on the farm from 10
As
to
a 14-year-old, you were studying Warren Buffett.
Yeah, because dad started me doing when I was like 11. He's like, Andrew, we hold like a few 100,000 bushels of grain on the farm at all times in the storage bins, and he wanted me to do the puts, calls, futures, kind of sell the spreads and all that. So when the market crashed, I'm like, what is this, right? Like I know the commodity market, but what is the stock market? And I knew about Warren Buffett, and so I had this $4,000. I'm like, hey, Dad, can I open an E-Trade account in your name? Because I'm not 18. And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So I throw 4,000 in, and I put it into like
your whole everything that you had, 2,000 to a go-kart, 4,000 to the stock market, because every 14-year-old should be playing the stock market, right?
Yeah, it was crashing. I'm like, I don't know what this is, but Ford at 99 cents. Like, I know what Ford is. That seems pretty cheap. Bank of America at $3, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac at 22 cents. Now, remind you, at this time, I wasn't an educated investor. I mean, I knew a little bit, but I'm just like, I know what Ford is. I know what that is. So I threw it in. Dumb luck. March 23rd, 2009, my 14th birthday. And I went back, so I just sat it and forget it. And I went back. My brother and I started our own farm operation that next year in 2010. We took over my grandpa's farm, and I was in 10th grade in high school. We started renting my grandpa's and dad's equipment, hauling it to South Dakota, custom combining and hauling it back to try to make some spread on equipment. And
were you driving it as well?
Yep. Yeah. My
So
brother and I went down.
folks not from North Dakota, when you're 14 years old in North Dakota, because of farming, you can get your driver's license, and Andrew took advantage of that. So
Correct.
I don't know the last time you hung out with a 14-year-old, Andrew, but the idea of them hauling heavy equipment across the state and investing in the stock market, that is asinine to me. I think that most 14-year-olds are trying to figure out, what do I do with this new chest hair that I just grew, right?
I know, it's funny too, because my parents, like, if I'm half the parents they are, I'm blessed. They are amazing. I'm like, they were so proud of me, but didn't make it feel like I was being different, so that I just feel like I was normal, which is interesting. And so yeah, we started doing that, and we were farming. The stock market was going up. Well, I was sitting in South Dakota. We were custom combining. We bring down a few guys to help us in the fields down there, and we rented a 1-bedroom apartment for the month we were there, and we just put a bunch of air mattresses. So it's just a nasty place. And I'm sitting there, it's raining.
I just imagine it smells of Doritos and feet.
Yes, Mountain Dew cans. I mean, the normal stuff. So we're sitting there, and it was raining out, so we weren't in the field, and I'm sitting there on my air mattress that's half deflated with my Vizio computer I bought with my Chinese restaurant money. And I'm looking, I'm like, all right, I went to my stock portfolio. It was worth $80,000 only like 15 months later. Because as you know, when it bottomed, like Ford went from 99 cents to like $6, like that. Like it recovered quickly. So I had $80,000 sitting there, and I'm like, I really want to put this in real estate. Farmland's only 3 to 4%. What should I do? So I believe in history. It doesn't exactly repeat itself, but it rhymes. And in the 80s, there was the oil boom, the first one. And Williston inflated real estate-wise values, and then Minot, and then Bismarck.
Yeah, all the North Dakota towns that were appreciating because of the oil boom in the 80s.
Yep. And then in 2010, which that's the moment I'm talking about right now, I noticed that Williston it's the hub of the Bakken, right? So the Bakken, the oil boom came back again in 05 because of the technology of fracking. And they were able to frack the Bakken and get a new level of oil out of the state. So Williston was inflated in real estate. Minot was 90% there. And Bismarck was hanging out like nothing was going on. So I'm like, maybe I should buy something in Bismarck, right? Like it's coming. And that's 3 hours from where I was going to high school. I'm still in high school. I'm in 10th grade. So I I'm like, all right. So I call up, I found a listing of these two apartments in Bismarck, two eightplexes, two buildings, so 16 total, 2 bedroom, 1 bath each unit. And a very lovely old couple owned it. And I'm like, hey, I would love to buy these. And they're like, well, we're looking for 1.25 million. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, sounds good. Here's 20 grand earnest. I'll go figure out the rest. And so
So
they come
so
home.
you gave them earnest money, you gave them a purchase agreement before you even had the money.
Yeah, really smart, right? And
It
I
proved to
can't
be, yeah.
remember. I hope it was refundable because that would have been really dumb. I don't remember though. So I go back home. We're done combining. We go back home from South Dakota. And my buddy's dad, Vance, he works, we'll just call him Vance because I don't want to say the name, but he works at this small town bank of this 800 people in Mohall. I'm like, hey, Vance, I got these properties in Bismarck I want to buy. Remind you, I'm in 10th grade. I got 80 grand and I would like a loan for the rest. And he's like, Andrew, I can't. Like, we need another 300 grand cash in a balance sheet. I'm like, okay, sounds good. So I walk out of the room, the building, and I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? So again, I'm still studying Warren Buffett, know him more now than I did 2 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I can't afford a lawyer to get documents written up. So I print off his original 1956 partnership agreement, white out the investors' names, and I go knock on 2 farmers' doors. I'm like, hey, give me 300 grand and your PG will buy these. And if we lose the first 80 grand loss, if we do lose money, it can be mine and I'll work for free. Nope. So basically for them, it was a no brainer. Right. And they gave me the money. I went and bought the apartments, went back to
So
Vance.
so you say it's a no-brainer, but if I have a 16-year-old show up at my door and says, "Hey, can I have $300,000?" I sure hope this is going to work.
Yeah.
It's not a no-brainer, but
True.
you're so confident, Andrew, in what you're doing, even as a 16-year-old, that it's contagious.
Yeah. That's a good point. And they were excited. And you're right. I mean, I came in confident. I'm like, hey, if I doesn't work, you can have my 80 grand. And they're probably sitting there like, this is gonna be kind of fun to watch, right? Like, let's go. I mean, it's a hard asset, but you're right. It's not a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so we bought them. And sure enough, the oil boom blew up. And 15 months later, the city of Bismarck calls us and wants to acquire the building to tear it down to add on to the high school next door. And they bought it for $2 million. And so I went back to these investors. I'm a senior in high school now, right? Coming into the senior year, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey guys, here's $1 million of the 380 we put in. Here's $1 million after debt and all that. And they're like, holy smokes. Okay. Well, you keep 400 because we're impressed, even though you shouldn't get that much. And our 300 each now. So they doubled their money, 150, 300.
Yeah.
We want to pay you this time. Put it in a fund. So that's when I created our holding company.
Mm-hmm. So as a 17-year-old, soon to be a high school senior, you created a holding company of investing in real estate.
Correct. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's fast forward here.
Yep.
You're now 26 years old, almost 27.
Yep.
Oh, you're 27. Excuse me.
I'm getting old.
Man, damn you and your beautiful looks and wealth. I sit here coveting all that you are. So here you are, 27 years old, and you made your first million by the time you were 18.
Yeah.
Now you're worth over $25 million.
Yeah.
How? Because the people that are watching, the people that are listening, whether it's live or on the replay, they're sitting here saying like, man, I don't have that farmer friend, and that timing isn't right in the market for me to go and magically buy a couple of eightplexes that get bought by the high school, and I don't want to bust tables at a Chinese restaurant. Like, everybody has a pile of excuses right now,
Yep.
And I want you to be able to talk about how you grew from 1 to 25 million and the things we should be doing as people who are trying to rip off and duplicate.
Great. Well, always looking for opportunity. So I went and started acquiring. I think focus is huge. So the biggest thing about whatever you do is you want to be the best at it. And I learned that from a billionaire mentor, because when you start in the entrepreneurship world, it's like playing the piano. You're playing other people's songs, right? And it takes you a few years to learn to play your own music, to write your own music. So up till 2015, I was kind of playing other people's songs, right? I was like, all right, like I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm buying this, buying that. So we did go, and between that $1 million holding company and today, we've raised about $100 million from private investors. And we've used that to grow the business. And we focus on self-storage. That's the biggest thing, is the focus aspect and finding vertical integration. And there is always opportunities. I think right now is the best time in the world to raise capital if you're raising capital for anything. I think that certain real estate assets that have you can do the cost segregation on the taxes. I think it's a great time for that, for depreciation, especially with inflation and stuff hitting. And I think the focus is the biggest thing.
So you say focus like it's a natural, easy thing, but I don't know. I don't know if the normal everyday Joe is great at focus. What have you done to create these disciplines around it? Because you went from being somebody who was playing somebody else's songs on the keyboard to now you are crushing every last key, and you're playing your own song now. How did you take focus and elevate it on such a level?
Well, I think the biggest thing is realizing what the world we live in. So today, books are getting shorter, everything's shorter due to attention spans, especially individuals in the millennial group, such as myself. You go on Facebook, a video isn't great for a minute, and you log off and move to something else. So the attention spans, I think, realizing that you naturally are being programmed, the world is pulling you to have less attention. And that is the opposite of what you need for focus. So I think first realizing what the world's doing to you, and then fixing that. So everybody's sitting around saying, I'm waiting for the idea. I'm waiting for the sun to shine just right. I'm waiting for that opportunity to fall in my lap. I hear that all the time. And I tell people, there isn't the idea. There's a million ideas that you need to grab and make the idea out of it, right? And so first off, grab an idea. Storage was one of the things. I laid out a bunch of things: storage, assisted living, apartments. And I just said, which one suits me best? Which one's pros and cons? And I said, storage is it for me. The other ones are great investments, but I needed to pick one. So I picked storage. I put my blinders up, and that's what I've worked on ever since. And I simply say no to everything else. And it's worked quite well. So you're right. Focus isn't something you just wake up and do. It's kind of like going to the gym. It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle, and you need to make sure that you understand, one, where the world's pulling you, and two, where you need to be, and get a mentor. You need one in person, and you need one famous one. Who do you want to be? Look at anybody in the world. Who do you want to be? Follow them. You have so many people that say, I want to be a teacher, and they listen to billionaires. You shouldn't be listening to billionaires if you want to be, or saying, I want to be a musician, but they're listening to a doctor, or I want to be a doctor, but they're listening to a teacher. Listen to who you want to be. You will be who you hang out with. You will be who you listen to.
You've been a student and a mentee for quite some time. Early on, again, you were reading a bunch of things by Warren Buffett. Was he your mentor that you didn't know personally? Is that how that happened?
Correct. Yes. Okay. Still is. Yep.
But then you got to share with the folks how you and Gary Tharaldson became peas in a pod, and what this looks like, because it's fascinating to me. Gary Tharaldson is the first billionaire in the state of North Dakota, and got there with a bunch of crappy hotels. And so maybe tell Gary's story, and then how you and Gary came to be peas in a pod.
For sure. So Gary's story is great. He started out, grew up in Daisy, North Dakota, didn't come from money by any means, and he was a school teacher, gym teacher, excuse me. And then he's like, I want to start
that's in a school. Yeah.
Yeah, that's in a school. Right?
Like, no, he wasn't even a teacher. He was a Phi Ed teacher. Like
something like that, right?
Those who can't teach, and those who can't teach gym, right? I think that's from a school. Yeah.
Perfect place. And he so he goes, he's like, I want to make some more money. I mean, who doesn't? So he's like, I'm gonna go start selling insurance. But he would, and this was when like assisted living insurance just came out, and it was really hot. So he was just going to door selling that. But he would knock on doors and hope they won't answer. He was so nervous, right? Like, he's like, what am I doing? So he built that business up pretty decent in his early mid-30s. And then he had this income tax now that he had an issue with, no depreciation. So a buddy of his, or a mentor, I'm not sure, said, Gary, you should just buy this hotel in Valley City, and there's one in Devil's Lake. You should buy them.
These are towns that are 10,000 people probably.
Yeah,
to give you all perspective, to buy a small hotel in a 10,000 person town.
very small. And he just said, buy them because you can depreciate the furnitures and equipment and all that inside of it rapidly for your taxes. So he did. He bought those. And then he kept making money in insurance. So he's like, gosh, so he's like 38, 39 now, right? This is in the 80s. And then he's like, well, I'm going to start building these. But the bank needed, so when he was building them those dollars that day, they were like $1.5 million that day in those days, about 3 million in today's dollars. And the bank was like, all right, Gary, we need about $300,000 down to go do this. And Gary's like, well, I really don't want to spend any of my money, but I don't want investors. So he was his own GC, his own realtor, and banks were easier back then. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. And he did everything himself. So we really only had to put down like 50 to 100 grand of the 300, because the rest, it was just like, here's my fees. And bank's like, okay, sounds good. So he started building them. And the thing is, with him not putting down much money and owning the whole vertical integration for forfeiting for his equity, it wasn't about the money, how fast he could build them. It was about how fast he could just simply build them, because he didn't need much cash. So he started building and building and building. And fast forward to 2006, he had 250 hotels owned and built in his portfolio with not one investor. And Goldman Sachs bought him for $1.9 billion. And that was in 2006.
Oh my gosh. And so how did you and Gary get in a relationship? Because I think we're all wondering, like, man, who can I call? Because you talked about the importance of having mentors.
Yes.
And you have one that you don't know, who's kind of like a distant hero, but then somebody that you can ask the hard questions to and help you with the rhythm day to day. How do you, I mean, is North Dakota that small that you can just be like sitting at lunch and Gary's at the table next to you?
No, it's a good question. So I am very fearless, which I think a lot of people are listening. Like, I'll do anything, right? Like when it comes to cold calling. And I made a list of the top wealthiest people in North Dakota, and I called all of them. And a lot of them answered. They were nice.
My phone never rang, Andrew.
Yeah, it would now, though.
No, it's still a hard pass. Yeah.
So I called them all, and they're very nice. But my uncle, and I was kind of like, well, this isn't working, right? I was kind of getting discouraged. I'm like, none of these guys are really like taking me under their wing. It was kind of just them being nice. And I'm laying in bed in Mapleton in 2014. And my uncle sends me an article, and my uncle's in New York. He sends me an article. And he's like, hey, do you know this guy? Like, Gary Tharaldson's the richest guy in North Dakota. I'm like, I've never even heard of him. Like, what the heck? How do I not know about this guy? So I'm like, okay. So I get up, shower, and grab my phone. I've probably been a week. It's probably like a Monday. I call up that office. I just Google it, like Gary Tharaldson office. Call the line. Nice lady's like, hey, how you doing? Just the receptionist. And, okay, is Gary Tharaldson around? And she's like, no, leave a message. I guess Andrew, he doesn't know me at all, but I think he's great, and I'd like to pick his brain. And she's like, okay. So I'm like, I'm never going to get a call back, right? Like,
of course.
2 months later, I get a call from the cell phone number from Vegas, and I thought it was a telemarketer. 2 months later, I call a lot of people. I forgot about this. So I answer it, and hey, this is Gary Tharaldson. I was about to hang up because I thought it was a telemarketer. I'm like, oh, Gary. Oh, Gary. Yeah. Hey. We talked for an hour, and then he's in Fargo, and we started going and having pie at the Village Inn every week or two. And it just worked. And now I love him. He's the best.
Wow. And so you guys talk every week now, don't you?
Oh yeah. Multiple times a week, texting, calling. Yeah. I'm always.
And he's a major investor in what you're doing.
Correct. Yes. He's involved in the self-storage with us.
So I want to make sure we're getting key takeaways, but I can't help but go down this rabbit hole. Why self-storage, and why do you think this is going to be a crazy cash cow? And folks listening, you need to know I've chosen to invest in Andrew and in his self-storage plan, because after he cast the vision, I'm like, yep, I see it. It makes sense to me. And Andrew, as far as I'm concerned, you're going to be the first billionaire that I know personally. And I'm sure you have a goal of when that will happen. But let's talk about self-storage first. Why storage? Why is this the thing that you believe is that hot commodity?
Well, I appreciate the kind words. And it all started out with Gary. Gary helped me start writing my song, right? Going back to the analogy. And I brought Gary a lot of ideas, because Gary was honest with me. He's like, Andrew, you're doing great, but you have no identity in business. And I love when he said hurt, but I'm like, you're right, Gary. I really don't. I'm all over the place. So I started bringing him ideas. How about this? How about that? I brought him self-storage, and he said, Andrew, that's your $1 billion idea. He said, self-storage is just like hotels were in the 80s. In the 80s, you had Bob's Hotel, Jim's Hotel, Jeff's Hotel, just like storage now. It was very fragmented. The brands were not embraced. And he said, what I did was I came in, embraced the brand, and created a vertical integration play to build hundreds of them, and then at a huge exit. And he said, I think storage is where hotels were in the 80s. I think it's the exact same thing. So public storage and extra space storage are similar to a Marriott, Hilton, and storage. They're both public REITs. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, for the first time ever, they started to do a third-party management where you can use their name, management, and algorithms in your facilities, and you can be the owner of them. That was an industry-changing event. So Gary and I were one of the first 100 to sign up under this deal. And now what we do is we print self-storage facilities. And he said, okay, next thing, Andrew, is you need to put together a 5-step criteria that anybody could follow for dirt, because we build ground up. So we have a simple criteria. We work in the Sun Belt because you can't buy sun. People are moving here. People love it. And you've got, especially with working remote these days, and we need a population of 100,000, 3-mile radius, household income of 100,000, 3-mile radius, uninvisible of a main thoroughfare. We need $170 a foot in rents or more. And we need our competition. We need some landlocked so we don't have a bunch of guys coming in next to us. So we started. And we started our own construction company. We are our own garage door dealership. We acquired an equipment dealership in Great Falls, Montana. It started in 1947. We are opening our own title company this year. And so when we go and build these things for $13 million, underneath the brand of Public Storage that manages them and runs them, we just own them, we're able to build them for about 10 to 15% less than our competitors. And
because you own all the vertical integration, all the vendors.
Correct. And the other thing, some people call me dumb, but as a farm boy, I was so far from Wall Street, I didn't know what normal fees were. So I have a very simple structure. There are no carries, profit sharing. I basically opened this holding company back when I was 18, which is still what we use. All these beautiful partners come in, 80 to 100 people, including amazing Erik Hatch here. And we pool our money as a group, and we go and do this. We're building 3 to 4 this year at $13 million a pop. And my goal is to open one new one every month by 2025. And not if, but when we achieve that goal, we'll be building 5% of all the new self-storage in the United States on a dollar basis from our company. And there's no profit sharing. Andrew, don't own the construction company outside of the holding like most guys do, right? They get investors, they syndicate, and they charge. People come in, we have a management fee for all of our staff, salaries, and that's it. I personally and my beautiful wife and I have bought shares just like everybody else at open market, and that's my upside. Am I dumb, generous? I don't know, but it works, and I have amazing partners, so I'm pretty happy about it.
Here's what I love about storage is I think it's a boomer play, and it's if you think about boomers, there's a lot of sentimental things, a lot of hanging on to, and as we're running into space issues with houses and other things, storage is becoming a norm, and there's really a sweet spot and an opportunity right now to capitalize. But the thing I love the most about the self-storage model, Andrew, is the fact that you're renting out for a minimum of $1.70 a square foot.
Yep.
And there's no HVAC, there's no plumbing, there's no bathrooms, there's really not an electrical bill, and you have one staff member or one employee that covers 100 to 1,000 units.
Correct. And storage has been around since 3000 BC, but it's evolved. And this new asset class it looks more like a hotel than a drive-up storage in the middle of nowhere that everybody's scared to go to because it's dark. 68% of people looking for security and safety. And that's why these new beautiful 3-story facilities, as of roughly 10 years ago, are the new thing. And there's such a future. And Amazon vendors are a huge client of ours. Storage facilities are kind of like a virtual mall. Back in the day, malls would have tenants that would sell goods in the mall and they would pay rent. Well, Amazon vendors sell their goods on Amazon kind of the same way. Well, when you walk up and down our hallways, these Amazon vendors that are selling purses or shoes or whatever on Amazon, they rent a facility and they're in there fulfilling their orders in our lockers, in our units. It's just amazing.
Pretty incredible what you've done with storage and what you're going to do. you talked about the plan of building one a month by 2025. You've taken these disciplines so far. Here's what I've heard. You talked about focus. You talked about having some mentors. You talked about vertical integration. What else is necessary in order for you to become who it is you're striving to be?
I would say treat the people that are really doing a lot of the work really well and bring them along on the journey. There's so many people, and all the successful people do it. Like I see a lot of like Shields, Gary Tharaldson, they pay people 20% above market because turnover is expensive. And the other thing is a lot of leaders, especially young ones, they do really well and then they start to think, they start to get the illusion that they did it and they don't need anybody and it's all them. They get a big head and they start to treat their people that actually did the work not very well. So that is very important. I know it sounds silly, like I would never do that, but people do. And so my goal is to make sure that the people that have built this are staying with us forever and they're treated right. Um, I think my goal is to be the dumbest one in every room. I've been pretty good at it. I'd like to continue doing that, and it's worked quite well.
Uh, if I'm listening right now, we have a smattering of an audience right now, but let's talk to the realtors that are out there. They see that you've grown to 25 million and that money is compounding by the second. They see that you've grown to 25 million in such a fast way. What advice would you give to somebody outside of focus and find a mentor and find something that you can vertically integrate?
I would say just remember that the good things take time, especially this generation. Everybody's always trying to rush for the buck right away, right? If imagine a graph, and the bottom is time, right? So you have the time on the bottom, and then you have your wealth goals on the vertical side. If you go and you have a lot of time on your side, you're young, you don't need much percentage return compounding to achieve those wealth goals. The problem is too many people try to have huge returns and get it by the time they're 30 that they fall down and they start over multiple times. And then when they're 50, they wake up and think, gosh, if I would have just had a decent return my whole life, I would be worth multi millions. Now, obviously, I know it's kind of contradicting because my wealth did go fast. But just so you know, the plan to get to where I'm at was not structured as risky. We are just in a great market. I picked a good asset class, and we just really grew fast. So it is a interesting scenario. I know it sounds contradicting, but take your time. That you cannot buy time. In the compounding formula, the most valuable thing is time. So use it to your advantage.
I think it's fascinating that you're not taking money out. One of the questions I asked you as an investor is, what's the return, and basically like what happens if I want to get my money out? And what was your response?
Yeah, good question. So we are a Berkshire Hathaway model. Berkshire Hathaway, when he bought that company in 1969 roughly, it was like 12 to $15 a share. And now it's what, 400,000 a share for Class A, whatever it may be. And that's because he did one dividend in the 80s and he said he must have been in the bathroom because he doesn't remember that happening. But his biggest thing was, I want growth. If someone wants cash, they can sell little fractional units because they'll be worth a lot more. I don't want to force everybody to have a dividend because what if people don't want dividends, right? So the issue they'll be in private is you have to create liquidity because it's not fair if you don't do dividends and there's no liquidity for the partners. So what we do is every 5 years we do tender offers, which basically is our holding company saying anybody wants to sell shares back, we'll buy them. Because all the owners that don't want to get cash or don't want to sell, we would love to own more of these assets. So that creates liquidity. And with our investor pool now growing to about 100, and all of which are wealthy individuals, if the holding company doesn't want it or can't afford it for some weird reason, the other partners have the next right. And if they can't afford it or don't want it, then anybody in the world can buy these shares, and the board just has to approve of them. So we've never had an issue with someone not having the liquidity they wanted. We just actually closed a tender offer and bought 100 shares back. So it's worked out quite well.
Folks that are watching live, I want to encourage you, if you have some questions, now will be a great time to put it in the chat. Andrew, how do you pay yourself with all this? Are you an employee of the company?
Correct. So I'm an employee. I'm one of the largest owners. I've bought a lot of shares over the years. So we have a 3% management fee that covers all the salaries in the holding company. So I just get a pro rata share of that. It gets smaller and smaller as we grow because I just simply need more people and I want to enjoy time with my wife and kids. So I don't want to work too much. So it's a fixed fee for the shareholders. Again, no carry, no profit sharing. And then that has to be split amongst the individuals that run this. And I
Mhm,
am one of those. So
mhm.
I get a 1099 for my portion.
Yeah, I remember sitting at a charity event with you a few months ago, and you're like, "Man, I'm broke." I'm like, "Andrew, you're worth $25 million." Like, yeah, but I'm broke.
Yeah, it's all on
How,
paper.
how's that comparison of like what you live off of versus what you're worth? Because like I know my net worth, and I certainly try not to live off of that by any means.
Yep. So my wife always laughs. I'm like, Lacey, I bought more shares. She's like, oh my God, Andrew, like I'm sick of penny pinching and budgeting because I keep buying shares every time I have any money. So we live on about, gosh, 5% of our income, maybe less. We really try to live on very little. I mean, our life could be a lot better, but we're young, and I just want to keep buying shares. Like I'm addicted to buying more of this company, and like I said, I pay what everybody else pays. I just love it so much. So we live on very little, and it's all on
Uh,
paper, the wealth.
yeah. On paper is the wealth, but man, you are a wealth of knowledge. I think it's so important to talk about the privilege that you have that is tied to the responsibility that you feel called to for the world.
Yes.
Because you and I are aligned through, not through wealth, but we're aligned through service. And so
Right.
I'd love for you to speak on that a bit.
So I knew at a young age that like this kind of chose me, and I'm really fortunate that I realized what my passion and talent was at a young age, and this was it. And stars aligned, right? Like the oil market and all these things. But I think that that's been the biggest thing is just realizing this is bigger than me. I'm trying to build something that's bigger than me, bigger than the team, bigger than any investor, and that's why I want to give back. Like I'm probably going to be part of the giving pledge. Like this isn't about money, right? Like I drove a 2001 Subaru with a 250,000 miles up to a couple years ago. Like this is about the game. I want to create something. And this is the reason that we connect ourselves, or I do, with individuals like Than with Unseen. Than's a friend of mine, regardless of Unseen, but those are the conduits that I want to find, source, and be able to give through because those nonprofits are so efficient. And and I'm excited to give back to the whole world and change whatever I can. My mom was a teacher, so she changed the world with knowledge, and I'm hoping I can change the world with I guess the money I make. It's about all I have to offer. So that's it.
Well, through Unseen, I know that your generosity is doing a great good. Folks, if you're curious, you should check out weareunseen.org, and they are doing a massive fight and plight against the sex trade industry. And there's some really tough things with human trafficking and other pieces that Unseen is actively uh, working to solve. And Andrew's dollars and skills are being used as a catalyst for that. So I love that you not only have this heart to grow impact, but it's for others. And that's such a great thing.
No, I appreciate that.
Hey, Paul has a statement here. He says, concentration builds and destroys wealth. How do you diversify both in asset class and liquidity?
Good question. I asked Gary that once actually. I said, Gary, isn't it kind of risky to put all your eggs in one basket, right? It's kind of the opposite of what you learn, and it can destroy wealth, right? And because all your eggs are in that basket. And Gary said that the interesting thing is you have to put your goals into perspective and put your plan to match those goals. And what I mean by that is if your goal is to be a billionaire, this is from Gary's mouth. If your goal is to be a billionaire, you're going to have to focus. Money, crazy money, billions of dollars of money is created on one thing and then is preserved on many. So Gary said, if you want to be a billionaire, you have to take that risk because that's,
Created by one thing, preserved on many.
yep. And so I said, okay, well, I want to be a billionaire. So I guess I got to do that. But if your goal is to be worth 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, even 100 million, of course, diversify. Your odds of failure can be a lot less. But again, being a billionaire doing that is gonna be pretty rare. I mean, there's a couple guys that have done it, but it is pretty rare. So that's why I picked focus because my goal is to be a billionaire and bring along our partners with.
I mean, Buffett speaks of that same accord, doesn't he? And that you
Yeah.
should really put all your eggs in a basket.
Yes, he says, why have 50 of your best spots? Why not put all your money in the 10 you love the most? So
Mhm.
again, it depends on your goals. There's no right or wrong answer, but you need to put a plan into place that can achieve the goals you want. And if you want to be a billionaire, diversification probably will not get you there.
Hmm.
Too much
Uh,
diversification. I shouldn't say any, but
Yeah, yeah. Josh has a very nice compliment to us. He says, "You guys are the type of people I strive to surround myself with." Josh, you are a man of character, and flattery will get you everywhere with us. So, well done. Looks like you just got a free storage unit.
I love it. Yeah,
uh,
when you're in
Andrew,
Arizona, come
Andrew,
on
let's
over.
speak quickly because you're a guy that pays attention to investing and other things. And there's this push and this surge for Web3. Folks, if you don't know what Web3 is right now, it is a combination. Really, if I were to summarize Web1 is the introduction of the internet. And so AOL and Yahoo now really dominated by Google. Web2 was the introduction of social media. So MySpace and Napster now really dominated by Facebook and iTunes. Web3 is currently NFTs and cryptocurrency. There's some other metaverse type things that are in there as well. I wonder if they will be the long-term players or if they're going to get pushed out. But there's a lot of folks getting very, very wealthy or very, very rich through these, and also completely striking out and crashing and burning. What's your take?
Well, I got a set of Oculus because I want to be on the forefront of it. I want to understand. I think meetings will be held on there. I think office space, I think that's going to be a whole different dynamic. And there's so many avenues that we can go through with this, right? I'm a big believer in the blockchain. I think, and again, just so you know, I have no money in any of this. I'm just saying I think I'm going to be a consumer, a user. I think blockchain, it's going to eliminate a lot of the things that you pay a lot. We pay a lot of money for trust in this world, right?
Mhm.
You trust this, you trust that, you pay a lot of money for it. Well, the blockchain will streamline some things. And then I do like the decentralization. And I had someone yesterday that compared our holding company to an NFT, and I thought it was interesting. He
Mhm.
said, "So you're telling me that someone based like your holding company is basically an NFT because you're selling you like when you invest in our holding company, you invest in everything I own forever. So it's basically like an NFT. You're buying a token because we're only going to have 700 shares. We're not going to have more than 700 in our holding company,
Mhm.
and each share is going to be selling for 300 grand here in a couple months. So you're basically buying a token in our holding company, and you will own pro rata share of everything I do forever. So I thought that was interesting. And then also the decentralization is lowering fees and costs, which also kind of shows with what we're doing. We are one of the lowest cost funds that I've ever heard of, and I'm assuming people have. So I know I kind of got off topic there. There's a lot of avenues. I'm a believer, but I'm not in any crypto.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's important to know that change is coming, and folks, if you listen to Andrew's story and you talk about the opportunity to grow some fast wealth, timing is certainly a part of it. And know that if you strike out, what's important is that you find something to focus on. You fully understand the risks and rewards. And it sounds like going all in when it works is really great. When it doesn't, here's what I know is if Andrew fails at this tomorrow, I'd bet on him again, simply for the discipline and the focus, the determination, the tribe he surrounds himself with. Even if this one is a swing and a miss, I'm going to say, well, is it the industry or is it the person that made the bad judgment? And so I like that. Andrew, my final question, and folks watching live, if you have any questions, this is your final chance to throw it out there. When do you hit a billion? When does your net worth hit $1 billion? Because it has to be on your roadmap, is it not?
Yeah, I'm a nerd. I have my roadmap out to like 89. So I think I should be able to hit it by 55, 54.
By
But
the time you're
I'm hoping to hit it
55?
way earlier. I'm just
what needs to happen?
conservatively.
What needs to happen is that all in storage.
Yeah, so I think I can easily scale in storage. I mean, I think we can go build 100 to 500 of these, and do an exit. And with inflation, they'll be worth 30 million a pop. They're worth 20 million now, so it'll be a multi-billion-dollar exit. Our share value to make me a I like saying this to make me a billionaire. Our shares in our holding company have to be worth $6 million each, and the first share sold for 35 grand. So
Yeah, I'm just counting the shares that I
yeah, you'll
am
be sitting real
committed to.
good.
Yeah, this is okay.
Yeah, you owe
Ice
me a
cream's
trip
on
to
me.
Tahiti.
Oh my gosh, that's fun to hear, dude. Andrew, final parting words for people. We wanted to give them three key takeaways, three things that they can do in order to try to grow a net worth of 25 million. I think you provided more than three, but I wonder if there's anything that's sitting on your heart that we really need to hear.
I think the biggest thing is and I said I'll say it again, it's just the people. Like you cannot build that kind of wealth with two hands. And you need trust and integrity, you need amazing people, and you need to treat them right. And just don't forget that. I know it sounds so simple, but I see it so much and it makes me cringe. So just treat people right, bring them along on the whole journey.
You cannot build that kind of wealth with two hands.
Yeah. It's not possible. Especially with my two hands. Like I said, I'm the dumbest in every room. So
Well, I don't think that's the truth here. But Andrew, you gave me a gift today, man. I'm so glad to have you in my life. I'm really glad to be an investor in this thing that's the next Dogecoin, to the moon. Can't wait on
you're an
that.
amazing partner. It's my blessing, my honor to have you part of it. That's right, right?
Folks, there's a couple of housekeeping items. One is I put here in the chat. We have a class coming up about how to grow and scale your team. In fact, when I talked with Andrew 12 months ago to now, he's actively gone after and added some leverage in his life. I'm super proud of him for that, because it's always about growing your team and getting the right who's on the bus. And so if we can help you get some of the right who's, we want to be able to do so. So we have our boot camp that you can sign up for, as well as we have a series that we're doing right now. Last week, we talked about how to increase your net worth with Aaron West. That was really great. Andrew brought the fire here. Next week, we're talking about how to focus on listings, which is, of course, super important as realtors right now. And then the week after that, we have a friend of mine, Ed Stroud, who owns 250 rentals, and is going to teach us how we can go and get our unfair share of that as well, because we want to help you have some cash in your pocket so you can do some good in the world. Andrew, my man, God bless you. I'll see you next week in Mexico so I can work on my tan.
That's right.
And
Pay the
appreciate
tanning
you so
beds, I
much.
don't get burnt.
No doubt. Folks, thanks for tuning in. Until next time.
Thank you.